extra content today. TriMet expects a slow return to pre-pandemic ridership. An empty TriMet bus 35. So we're going to have a little interview here. It's JC Veneta. Oh, God. Let's hear Veneta. Let's hear our old pal JC Veneta. We know him because of the Lane Jensen days. He was the only person that Lane Jensen was approved to talk to. If Lane talked to anybody else, he could go to jail. I'm not making that up. Okay, this is true. But he had JC Veneta that he could talk to without a penalty of jail. And Veneta was brought in by McFarland. He was a pal of McFarland's. And now he's moved up to the Bernie Bottomley position. Bernie's taken off with his hundreds of thousands of dollars. Who knows what his pension is? Probably 8 or 9 or 10,000 a month. And now JC gets his chance. So let's hear how he does.
From the Gert Boyle studio at OPB, this is Think Out Loud. I'm Dave Miller. Last year, when the pandemic changed people's lives almost overnight, public transit ridership plummeted. In the Portland area, trips on buses and on MAX trains dropped by about 2/3 in just a few weeks. But more than a year later, even though fewer people are working from home and vaccine doses are plentiful, TriMet ridership has barely budged. It is still less than half.
Everything is back to normal, by the way, in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is opening up. In 2 weeks, the entire quarantine is off. Everything can be back to the way it was before the pandemic because something like 2/3 of the states is vaccinated. That's it. It's all over. We're saved by the vaccine. The vaccine has saved us, folks. The brand new technology, RNA vaccine, has now saved the world. Yeah.
Of what it was pre-pandemic. For more on the last year and the future of public transit in the Portland area, I'm joined by JC Veneta, the Executive Director of Public Affairs at TriMet. Welcome to Think Out Loud.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
So, as I mentioned, ridership basically fell off a cliff in mid-March of 2020, and it has not come back up yet. For the big picture first, when do you expect to see those numbers back up even just to pre-pandemic levels?
Yeah, you know what? We did see a huge drop, as you noted, as the pandemic started. People were told to stay home, and have been transporting essential workers throughout the pandemic. And I would note that on board our buses and trains, we have physical distancing rules. And so when a bus reaches a certain capacity, they can no longer pick up people. So we're kind of capped at the number of people that we can currently transport until OHA and the governor's office lift those restrictions. But when we start to plan out, as more vaccinations are being put in arms, which is such a good sign, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, we know that we will be bringing more people on board. And, it's going to take a little bit as more people are teleworking from home and stuff like that. We do expect people to come back. Now, it will be a slow journey for us, but our modeling shows that we won't reach pre-pandemic levels until 2025, somewhere in there. But we've already...
2025. 3 years. Yeah, who knows? I don't know if it'll ever come back, but okay, whatever.
We started to see people come out for those recreation trips, like the Thorns and Timbers games. I mean, how many of us want to actually go to one of those games? And so there's some excitement, or a Blazers game. Now, granted, there's capacity limits still. But as we come out of this pandemic, I think that more and more people will be wanting to get out and explore and use our services to get out and do some recreational travel.
So before we get to that bigger picture again, so for the two recent Blazers games, the first ones that fans could go to in 13, 14 months, you saw a small bump in ridership to the Moda Center?
There was a little bit. I would say that a lot of people did drive, but there was a little bit. And we also did see for even the timbers a little bit. So we know that there is some pent-up demand there.
Okay, but back to that date that you mentioned, it's pretty striking. You said that your modeling shows it's going to go slowly, but you said you're not expecting internally to have ridership levels go back to pre-pandemic levels for 4 more years till 2025.
That's correct. That's correct. Only because a lot of companies are still trying to understand teleworking. They'll be keeping their folks home. And to be very honest, I think that a lot of folks, even with vaccines, there is going to be a hesitancy to go out and to congregate and to be around other people. So it is a slow journey for us, but one that we know will come back.
How worried are you that some people who used to rely on public transit, especially to get to work, but not necessarily, people use it obviously for many reasons, that they've just developed other habits over the last 14 months? Either they're driving more or walking or biking, or they're working from home. But how worried are you that some of those trends are not temporary, but are going to be permanent?
Yeah, it is something that we are watching. I know that we have done a lot of research throughout the pandemic just to gauge people's opinions. And, we do think that a lot of people...
They've done a lot of research since the pandemic started.
will come back. Now, that's not to say that 100% of those folks are going to come back, because the pandemic has changed all of our lives.
Look, the choice riders are gone. That just goes to show you that the entire idea of catering to the choice riders was a mistake from the very beginning. Never should have happened. Transit should have never got involved with development. They should have just stuck to their original mission, which was transporting people that needed a ride. But no, the neoliberals at TriMet hijacked the mission, and the rest is history.
Changed a lot of our habits. And so we know that, some habits will have been changed permanently. But I think it's incumbent upon us at TriMet to really look at how we can get in front of those people and to remind them the benefits of all of the services that we provide. I will say this, that, as more people may have chosen to drive to work or to the store in their own car, congestion levels will go up. And we are definitely...
let me point out that before the pandemic, Portland was in the top 10 worst congested cities. TriMet doesn't make a dent in congestion. That's always been a lie. Just want to make that point.
Definitely play a role in helping to relieve congestion and to get people where they're going. So, yes, some of those habits will have changed. However, I would say it's our goal to change them back and to bring people back on board.
Does that mean that internally right now you're having meetings to figure out new marketing campaigns?
No, absolutely. We have a
new marketing campaign. Okay, in the words of Headways Matters, run more fucking buses and trains. That's your fucking marketing, okay? You don't need anything. Just run more fucking service, man. If you had service every 5 minutes, people might want to ride your shithole.
Leadership Recovery Task Force that we've been meeting every 2 weeks to discuss all
the COVID Recovery Task Force.
All the different aspects of us internally, what we can do to prepare for when we can open up our doors, throw them open and welcome people on board. So it's everything from marketing.
Well, come on, the vaccine is Massachusetts. Everything's wide open. No distance, no crowd control. Everybody can do whatever they want. How come Oregon's not? We've had many more deaths than you did.
Campaigns to teaching people, to refamiliarizing people with our system and how to pay fares and what to do. We're also looking at our customer experience. Announcements on board, service tweaks that we need to make.
What the hell is he talking about? Jesus.
cleanliness and security, all of those things we are working on internally because we know we want to make a good first impression so that when someone comes back and they're headed to their job or they're going to that Timbers game, that we give them a positive experience and that they'll come back because that's going to be key to keeping them coming back.
Just yesterday, the governor announced the kind of news that a lot of Oregonians have been waiting for, more of a roadmap for a real return to something closer to pre-pandemic life. The number that we're looking for now statewide is 70% vaccination rate among people 16 and over who are eligible for the vaccine. And once we get there, we'll be done with the extreme or moderate or high, those risk categories that go county by county. Does that mean for TriMet that potentially by late June, you won't have to worry about limits on the number of people who can ride a bus? The limit will be the old occupancy limits.
There you go.
Yes.
Severe COVID, high COVID, elevated COVID, guard COVID,
with
low
OHA
COVID.
And the governor's office to understand when that will happen. Obviously, it's been a week-by-week determination, as you can imagine and you've seen. So we're working very closely with them to understand when we could potentially lift those restrictions. And yes, I think that at TriMet, we look forward to that. And I think that our riders would too, because with those restrictions, it has caused some folks some angst on coming on board a bus that might be a little bit beyond their comfort level or a train. So I think without those limits, it's a sign that things are getting back to normal. And I think will help ease some of that tension that our riders, and to be very frank, some of our employees are feeling too. So yeah, we look forward to lifting those restrictions.
What do service levels look like right now? I'm thinking, specifically about the number of buses per hour on any given bus line or, max train line for that matter, compared to what they were, in February of 2020.
That's a great question. And I would say, so at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw that sharp drop-off that you noted earlier. And we actually cut service by about 20% for financial reasons, for service reasons, a number of reasons.
For financial reasons. But he didn't lose any pay. Capital projects didn't lose any pay. Not one executive was laid off. They laid off 9 people in Cap 9, if they even did it. I don't even believe they did. But it was financial. We had financial problems. There's your liars, your overpaid liars in action there.
We started to see as we were transporting people, and because there were limitations on board, we actually needed some of that service back. So we are now at 10% below our pre-pandemic levels, and we have been, moving people efficiently around the region. I would note that
moving people. Oh my God, what a liar! They don't have enough bus drivers, folks. They're canceling dozens of runs. Max breaks down. There goes your bus service. They pull the buses right off the routes. He's lying. You're a liar, JC. Lie, lie, lie.
We also started to see during the pandemic that some of our buses were filling at capacity, and we were actually passing some people up, unfortunately. And we actually had to put more buses on those routes. So we have an incredible team who they're constantly monitoring the loads on board our buses and are changing it daily just to make sure that we are meeting the demand of folks who are wanting to travel. So
I think not meeting the demand. I just said the buses are canceled, trains are breaking down. Nope, sorry.
Our overall delivery of our service on a daily basis has gotten more sophisticated, but because we've had to accommodate the kind of the differentiation in ridership each day. But so at some point in time, we want to look at how we can grow our service. Obviously, with the Biden administration in place, we are a solution for climate change. And I think that you talked about...
They're a solution. My ass, they're a solution for climate change.
About the drop-off. Talked about us not getting back to service ridership levels to 2025. I think we really want to figure out a path forward where we can transport more people and more people will be riding because it definitely is a priority of ours as we come out of this pandemic to build our ridership.
I spent some time looking at your 2021 fiscal year budget, and to the extent that I understood it, it looked like you received an additional $130 million in federal operating grants.
That's right, they did, and they still cut service
for the fiscal year that is coming to a close, and that more than made up for the money that you lost in fares from the huge decline in ridership.
Okay.
What are you doing with that huge increase in federal operating money, given that ridership is down?
So I can...
All right. He just hit... That's the question. That's the big question that I've had. And let's see what he says.
I can tell you we are not sitting on cash right now, despite popular belief. We did receive $185 million through the CARES Act, and that money really has been used to fund our operations and our preventative maintenance through the pandemic.
No, it hasn't been used to fund your operations. You just said you cut service 20%, and you still have service cut 10%. So you lied. It didn't fund operations.
If you remember, our general manager had made the commitment that no one would be furloughed, no one would be laid off, and that costs money. We also had to ramp up the cleanliness of the system, which is quite
that didn't take $185 million to hire the cleaners. Don't give me that shit.
Expensive. Putting hand sanitizer on board, mask dispensers. We have been cleaning and sanitizing roughly every 4 hours our Macs and buses. We hired 130 people on to do that cleaning and sanitizing, and that roughly added about $10 million to our budget. So going through
that's not $180 million
has been expensive with the drop in our fare revenue.
Let's get this straight, folks. Fares account for 16% of operating budget and 6% of trimet budget. So fares never had anything to do. You know, when they talk about fares being part of the reason they cut, they're lying. They're just liars, okay? It's just a lie.
That money essentially helped pay for those operations and preventative maintenance.
What do people who have not ridden a TriMet bus or train since March of 2020, what do you want them to know if they are now hesitant?
And who knows where that CARES Act money went? We have no idea. I guess it went to my guess is it went to capital projects because that's where they put all their money. All the extra, everything they can squeeze goes to capital projects.
About coming back or thinking about coming back?
You know, I would say first off, I'm probably in the same boat as all of them. So, and we all are as we get back to our normal life. And I use normal in quotes. But
wait, just to be clear, you mean
for you, the best thing that ever happened to this executive class is COVID. They got their pay. They got to stay home. They didn't lose a thing. It was the best thing that ever happened to the elites.
You mean you have been hesitant to ride a bus or light rail over the last year?
I would say I'm hesitant to do anything to rejoin society. So I think it's all in due time, and it's when all of us feel comfortable to do that.
He was good. He had you there, but you came back
once again. And I've ridden trains and buses and streetcars all throughout the pandemic, so it hasn't been an issue for me.
Oh,
but
he just said
we are ready.
See what he did? He doubled back. He said, I'm scared to do anything. And then he just said, it hasn't been an issue for me. Yes, sir. You just lied. Caught you.
The amount of the sanitizing that we are doing on board, having masks and hand sanitizer available for folks, really looking at how we can improve the overall customer experience. We are ready when they are ready. And I think that's the message I would want to send to them.
Except you're not ready.
As we move forward, because we do want them on board. We're excited to have them back, not only just to have the ridership and to...
TriMet doesn't care about ridership. It hasn't cared about ridership since Fred Hansen showed up. They don't care about ridership.
Help our climate and the environment, but also I know our operators miss them. And so I would just say that we're all in this together.
You're all in this together.
And whenever
No, you're not all in this together. I hate that, man. You're getting $200,000 a year sitting at home. Don't give me that. We're all in this together. You know, you're making 200 grand sitting at home.
Ready, we're ready.
What changes did you make during the pandemic that you intend to keep even when all the public health restrictions are lifted and we go back to something more like pre-pandemic life?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I would say, one, this is my own personal opinion and not that's probably not shared with TriMet, but I hope that we keep the hand sanitizers on board. I actually like having that option available on board our buses and trains.
It's just too bad that it took a goddamn pandemic to clean up these buses because they've always been pigsties. You know, when I used to work there, I was constantly having colds. All year long, I'd have colds. I'd have 6-8 colds a year because the buses were dirty. The ventilation systems weren't clean.
From the TriMet side of things, I would say how we've communicated with our riders and the public. We really looked at amping up how we communicated with folks, and we got sophisticated about it as well.
What?
So I think that is definitely one piece that we will...
What? You know what he's talking about, Rippy? What's he talking about, Rippy?
Continue on and will continue to grow because it's so important and it's meant a lot to our riders and many of those in the community as we move forward. So that's definitely one piece that we will continue to keep as we head forward.
J.C. Veneta, thanks very much for joining us.
Well,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
J.C. Veneta is the Executive Director of Public Affairs at TriMet.
Yeah, well, that was good fluff. Didn't say much of anything, did he? Which I expected him to say nothing. So let's just get a little taste of what's really happening at TriMet, just to bring some reality to this little presentation.
239 Eastbound Division, go ahead. 239, he sent a verbal. Yeah, I got a customer here at my side. He's yelling and screaming at me. Okay, are you at the stop at 52nd yet? Affirmative. All right, make sure your doors are open and give me a description. Dispatch, she just tried grabbing the phone out of my hand. Okay, I'm trying to send police. Can I get a description? Yeah, white female, probably 60s, pink beanie, blue jacket, black pants. Copy, I'm calling. Thank you.
There's your little,
Thank you.
That's what's really going on at TriMet, not Veneta's baloney. That's a typical bus call. We hear them constantly. It's mayhem out there, folks. Because you don't really know it because the media lies about everything. But there's 20% of the population in this country is literally dying. But they don't get mentioned. They don't count. Nobody cares about them. And they're in the ditch or they're in a tent or they're in a car. And they're all on the public transportation system because there's nowhere else for them to go. Because we have such a wonderful society and a wonderful government that's just so great. So, yeah, if you ride TriMet, watch out, man. It's not all that pleasant.